We got Cyndee here on the line with us. What do you want to ask her?
What are some of the key performance indicators you ask for from the property manager?
So I always want to know, what is the occupancy? What is the average rent?
Mhm.
Because as long as we're leasing at the higher rate, that's going to keep pushing our average rent up to get us to where we have it projected. I'm also wanting to know, what is their marketing? How many people are coming through the door and how many of those are being converted into leases?
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Really excited for today's show. We got two great people on the line with us today. We got our experienced investor, Cyndee Harding, and our aspiring investor, Charles Hamilton. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Cyndee, you're going to be up first. So let's have a little chat. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm excited to chat with you and Charles today.
Yeah.
My name is Cyndee Harding, and I've been in multifamily since late 2018, and I love it. My background is I was an accountant for 25 years, and I had my own accounting business, and I specialized in small businesses. And so I actually sold that practice, and for about 5 years had another adventure, and then I was introduced to multifamily, and it was such an easy segue because every property is its own small business that has its own income, its own expenses, its own idiosyncrasies, and they have the same challenges that a small business has. So I really just slid right into that, mainly doing asset management. I am GP on 6 different properties right now, and I do the asset managing, and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So besides the small businesses, what do you love about the asset management side?
I love working with the property management and the GPs. So I also do third-party asset management. So some I'm not on the GP, some I am. And I love being able to kind of integrate what the GP has, the vision for the property when they bought it. I look at their underwriting and how are we actually implementing it on the property. So I work with the property management. So I consider myself a liaison between the two. So, I want to make sure that we make our investors happy, that the GP is happy, that the property management's happy. And one of the bosses that we don't think about is the lender. We need to make sure the lender's happy, that we get all those things done that they require.
Yeah. And that is something I think a lot of people don't realize. I didn't realize till we got our first property under contract and we got the property condition report back and we got a list of things. And it's like, what's this? Those are all the things you need to get done in the next 3 months. Oh, yeah, that is an important thing. So, and one more point there. Lenders also want your financials on a quarterly basis. So they want to make sure that you maintain your debt service ratios. So yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people don't realize that until they get into the property and the lender's like, okay, send us your financials. Like, all right. But cool. Good point. Yeah. So let's see. So accountant to real estate asset manager. Now, when you look for the deals that you like to manage, is there a specific asset class that you stick to? Do you like the value adds, the stabilized? What's kind of like your sweet spot?
I like a value add. I'm careful with those because sometimes I have to really look at the underwriting. And honestly, if someone comes to me and they are interested in me asset managing for them as a third party, I just dive into their underwriting because I want to make sure what they're projecting is a reality for me, because I don't want to sign on for something that I cannot fulfill. So I do like being able to really dig into it. I do my own market survey. I have my own underwriting that I run. I ask, for the T12. So I do my own underwriting. I just want to make sure that when I look at the property that I'm seeing it the same as the syndication, the ones that are purchasing it, and make sure that I can meet those expectations. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. You want to make sure that their business plan is achievable before you sign on to execute the business plan. Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I don't want to be set up to fail. And also, I do give them my own feedback,
Mhm.
whether I asset manage or not. I
Yeah.
still will, say, if you want a few minutes, I'll be happy to go over the underwriting with you,
Mhm.
especially if it's one I'm not going to do. I
Yep.
like to tell them why, so
Yeah.
that it helps them with their underwriting, so they can look at it and make sure that their numbers do line up.
Yeah.
Because, we want everyone to succeed.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. We're here to help each other.
Yeah. So what are some red flags? What are some things that when you see it in the underlighting, you're like, not going to do this?
Well, two I can think of straight away that I just recently looked at. When I looked at what their rent was at the current time
Mhm.
and what they were looking for the value add.
Mhm.
So they had to propose we were going to raise it X amount of dollars. And then I went to the CoStar and they were the top of the market. That's a red flag, because
Yeah.
if you're already top of the market, how can we do a rent bump?
Mhm.
So that was a huge flag for me. I want to see us more lower to the middle. I mean, we
Mhm.
don't, we don't have to be the cheapest, but we
Right.
definitely, need to have that room to be able to do the rent bump. And it just wasn't there. And so
Yeah.
that was something I was able to talk with them about, how I just didn't see how we could to increase it that amount.
Yeah.
The other is, I look to see, is it cash flowing? If it's not cash flowing, I need to know why and what is their plan for that.
Yep.
When are they planning on doing distributions for investors? Or
Mhm.
investors coming in? This is where I understand their business plan. Are investors coming in knowing it's going to be a year, we're going to stabilize it, and then they're going to get their pref?
Mhm.
So those are two. Just because it's not cash flowing, that is a red flag for me to
Mhm.
understand what their business plan is.
Okay. But it sounds like if they're not cash flowing, you just got you. I mean, that kind of takes a couple extra steps for you where you're just verifying. You'll still do the deal if it doesn't cash flow, as long as the business plan is solid and there's a clear path to get there, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What I say is, anytime I see something I don't quite understand, it
Mhm.
creates a question.
Mhm.
And a question, all that means is need to know more information.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've done a lot of value add properties before, and they don't cash flow out the gates a lot of times. I mean, well, I guess 2 years ago when interest rates were in the threes, you could get a lot of cash flowing value add properties. Hopefully those times come back again, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of that right now. But
No,
who
no,
knows?
you don't see it right now.
Geographically, where do you like to operate?
Actually, I'm pretty open to anywhere in the United States.
Okay.
I have properties right now in Mississippi,
Mhm.
Kentucky, and Texas.
Okay.
I love the Sun Belt, but I grew up in Florida, so that's probably why I'm a little
Yeah.
prone to that. I do live in Arizona,
Mhm.
and we're in Phoenix. Have had a hard time finding properties that work for us in Phoenix. So eventually, I would love to have something in my backyard.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I'm doing right now too, is I'm looking in my backyard. And I mean, you know that, but and I think most people who listen to this podcast know, because I talk about it so frequently. But yeah, we're bullish on Salt Lake. And I think Salt Lake in a lot of ways is kind of like Phoenix, where it's hard to make numbers work. Let me rephrase that. The way to make the numbers work is you have to look, longer than like a 2 to 3 year window, and you've got to put a lot more down. You can't come in with a 25% down payment and you can make anything work here. But yeah.
I do think Salt Lake is a really good area, though. I've
Mhm.
I've I've looked at that and looked at the market survey, and I see a
Yeah.
lot of potential there.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of potential. And I think Salt Lake's one of the places that I wish I would have invested in 5 years ago. But my first single family home was in the Salt Lake metro area. But that was first single family investment property. So I just wish I would have bought more. But
Do you still have it?
No, we sold that. That's actually what helped me get into the multifamily space. We sold that, and the proceeds from that deal helped me to invest in the first couple multifamily properties that I found as a GP, pay for the EMD, and I think I paid for coaching out of that property too. So yeah, we still did fairly well. I mean, get this, I bought that property in August of 2007. So I don't know if you could have come closer to the peak than when I bought that property. But 10 years later, I mean, we paid less than 200,000 for it, but 10 years later, we still walked away with a six-figure profit. So
Mhm.
that is the power of real estate. And we bought like literally at the peak. So
Patience,
yeah,
patience, patience.
patience, patience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a fun one. That was a really fun one. But Speaking of fun ones, let's see if we can talk about, one of the fun properties you've been able to manage. So pick your favorite, or just one that's a good story, and let's talk about it a little.
Well, it's kind of all the above.
Mhm,
So our first property was a unicorn. It
mhm,
was in Vicksburg, Mississippi. I didn't even know where Vicksburg, Mississippi was, even though I grew up in Florida.
mhm,
It's on the Mississippi River.
mhm,
And it is an amazing small town. It's a tertiary market. And we bought this property and it is performing so beautiful. We absolutely love it. And we love Vicksburg. And through owning that, we were actually secret shopped by a broker who was
mhm,
posing himself as an owner,
mhm.
and he actually called me on the phone and said, I see that you're getting great rents. What are you doing? And my first thought was, well, you're my competition, because he said he
Yeah.
owned several properties in Vicksburg, small town.
Yep. Mhm,
But like I said, I was raised in the South, taught to be
yep.
polite. And I thought, well, I'll just tell him what we're doing. It's not a big secret.
Mhm,
And so I just talked to him about it. Well, come to find out, about 6 weeks later, he sent me an email and said,
mhm,
I don't really own them. I'm a broker for the owner, and
mhm.
he wants to sell his properties to someone that is a good operator. And so he had gone to our properties, talked to
Mm,
our on-site, talked to me on the phone, and we passed the test. And he
nice.
wanted us to buy 3 properties that he had.
Cool.
So we ended up syndication on 2. One's 100 units, one's 132.
Mhm,
And then we did a joint venture on a 27 unit.
mm,
So we own over 300 units in Vicksburg, which is
nice.
25% of the market.
Mhm,
So we're pretty saturated there in
yeah.
Vicksburg. We're not going to add any more to that.
Mhm,
But it has been such a fun journey.
mhm.
This owner had owned it for about 40 years.
Okay.
And for the last maybe 5 to 10 years had been pretty tired. He's an older gentleman.
Mhm,
He had a business partner that passed away during COVID.
yep.
And so he never really got back into it. He hadn't raised rents for 3 years.
Ooh.
And so we were when I talked about being the cheapest,
Mhm,
our 100 unit was the cheapest in town.
mhm,
And so we did the underwriting. We allowed for a really high vacancy the first year,
mhm.
because coming out of the gate, we knew that we were going to raise the rents $150,
Yeah.
which is kind of a steep. And we understand that, but they were
Yeah.
so far behind on the rents, and the properties were in great shape. What they needed was the upgrades.
Mhm,
So we had a pretty high capex,
mhm.
where we allotted funds to paint, do landscaping. We really wanted to bring those places not just to market, but
Yeah.
so that they were a great place to live. And so this has been such a fun
Yeah.
asset managing project for me,
Mhm,
having to work with the CapEx, keep track of, what are our bids? What have we approved? How did
mhm,
it come in? Did we stay within budget? Working with the property management. I'm GP on that as well. And
mhm,
so it's just been a joy. I love it.
mhm.
And I love Vicksburg itself. So I feel like we're invested in the community as well. So we
Yeah.
love that town, and we're bringing jobs to that town, and we're providing a safe place for people to live.
Nice, nice. Love that. Yeah, a lot of goodness there. And so when you raise the rents by $150, that is a big chunk at one time. Do you have a strategy for how you do that? And I guess the follow-on question is, how was that received by the current tenants?
That was a very interesting little journey on that. So
Mhm,
we had about 50% the first, I'd say, 4 months
mhm.
gave notice to vacate.
Okay.
They wanted to find somewhere else to live. Some of them actually came back.
Yeah.
So they did a notice to vacate. They went out and looked and said, oh my gosh,
This
like
is super
even at
cheap.
150, it's still very reasonable. So
Yeah.
they did come back.
Mhm,
A lot of the ones that moved were job related, or they were buying a home.
mhm,
So there were some that, it was the rent increase and it was just a renewal.
mhm.
So something that's tangible in the unit. So we'll do, a gooseneck faucet in the kitchen, or we do
Yep.
a lighting package, something that's going to bring an upgrade to the property.
Yep.
If they chose to vacate, then what we did is we literally upgraded the unit: new flooring, new paint, new appliances, new lighting. And that was actually a $300 rent increase. And so that has been a little bit of a challenge, because we are in a tertiary market,
Mhm.
but we are we are less than 10% vacancy, and we
Yeah.
had it underwritten at 9. And actually today I did some stats for the GP, and they're all above 90%. Two of them are at 93.
Mhm.
And so the one that we had 2 years ago, they are at the top of the market, and
Yeah.
we're at 98% occupancy
Nice.
on them.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
I think our underwriting, it was significant in our underwriting that we allotted
Mhm.
for a huge vacancy that first year. We
Yeah.
already knew that going in, and we talked to our investors and told them, this is what we're doing. And
Mhm.
we are going to have a little bit of a challenge, but we're working our marketing. We're doing those things to help people see that we are invested in the community itself.
Yeah.
Both of our on-sites live in our properties.
Oh,
So
that's nice too. As long as they're loyal, I guess. I mean, yeah, that does end up being, good in many cases. But back to, how you answered that question. I've seen the same thing several times. We've bought a couple of properties, similar situations, people who've owned it for, a couple of decades, and usually the same story plays itself over and over again. They're tired owners in a lot of ways. And when you go in and push up rents, everybody cries and complains, and most of them stay because you're still a good deal, right? And then the second point on that one, I mean, and I've had this conversation with property managers before, is pick a price where we get a fair amount of people moving out, especially when you're doing a value add. It's not actually a bad thing if a lot of people move out, because now you can just start turning units, renovating. So anyway, yeah.
that was a game plan, and we knew
Mhm.
that going in. That we talked with the property management. We're okay if they move out.
Yeah.
So because we really wanted to upgrade those units. That's our whole thing. Is
Yeah.
we're really trying to create a great place for people to live, and we want teachers living there, people that are involved in the community.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you might have a temporary blip on the radar as far as your vacancy rate, but if you can get those units renovated quickly and new tenants in at the higher price, that's
Mhm.
going to benefit you in the long run. So cool. All right. Well, changing gears a little bit, or shifting gears, a question really quickly about, why you do this. So, Cyndee, what is your big burning why?
I love asset management.
That works. Yeah.
I don't know what else to say. It brings me a lot of joy. I enjoy what I do. I didn't want to stay doing accounting. I wanted to do asset management, and it really fell in my wheelhouse. So
Mhm. Nice. Nice. You just enjoy it. So,
yeah.
it is nice. I definitely enjoy what I do too. It's the thrill of the hunt, the, helping a lot of people at the same time. I think there's a lot of this can be a lot of fun. I do enjoy it. I like that. Well, last question, and that is, what's next for you?
Well, I'm working on some education. I feel like as I've met with people, especially as an asset manager, people that are new into multifamily, they say, they have their team they put together, they have an underwriter, they have
Mhm.
an investor relations, and it's kind of the last person sitting there says, I'll do asset management. And that's not what it is. There
Mhm.
is so much. And, you mentioned it before, 5 years ago, you could buy a property and just kind of
Yeah.
let it ride for a couple of years, 3, 4 years, sell it. Everybody
Yeah.
makes money and it's good. We're
Mhm.
not in that anymore.
Mm-mm.
You have to watch the numbers. You have to work with the property management. You have to know what the business plan is.
Mhm.
And so I feel like people should understand what asset management is. And there are so many that it's perfect for their wheelhouse and they don't know it. And
Yeah.
so I'm really working on education, and those that have that are good with numbers but don't really have an accounting background. I want to help them learn,
Yeah.
like how to read a financial, how to use a unit tracker, how to keep track of what's going on, and when do we report to the lender, and
Mhm.
all those things, that the little pieces that people don't even know about. They don't know they have to send it to the lender, or they have every quarter they have to send the information. So
Yeah.
education, that's coming up for me. I'm
Yeah.
gonna help people learn what it means to be an asset manager.
That's one thing that, most coaching programs never even touch. I think, and I mean, I just started a coaching program, and I'll be honest, my asset management portion isn't very robust, but I think most people, when they teach, it's the first deal, because that's what people pay for. People pay to help get their first deal. And then after that, most people are, all right, I got this, whether they do or don't. So
Yeah, maybe I can help you with your training in your asset management.
Maybe you can. I think we've talked about that once or twice before. So yeah, maybe. Yeah. I like that. So, well, cool. We're going to shift gears a little bit and bring Charles on. So Charles, how's it going, man?
How you doing?
Doing really well. Do us a favor. Tell us about yourself.
My name is Charles Hamilton. I'm from Beaufort, South Carolina. It's about 45 minutes from Hilton Head and an hour and 15 from Charleston, kind of in the middle on the coast. As far as my background is concerned, I started off as an aerospace engineer, graduated from the University of Cincinnati. But when I graduated, there were no aerospace engineering jobs, so I ended up working in a mechanical engineering job. And I worked for a computer-aided design company doing that. And that allowed me to go to Xerox, Rockwell Collins, and also Seagate as some of the companies I had to work for. And then from there, I had a job in between, but then my final job for a long period of time was working at Booz Allen Hamilton, where I was a consultant there and also a software project manager for them too as well.
Yeah. Nice. So Booz Allen Hamilton, are you working on the Marine Corps Air Station in Beaufort or somewhere or close by?
No, I'm not working right now.
Okay. Oh, well, you're doing multifamily. Yeah. When you started explaining where Beaufort was, I was just pointing at my shirt, the big Marine emblem on it. I'm like, yeah, I know where that is.
Paris
But
Island.
yeah, that's it. So been there once or twice, but well, cool. I actually went through boot camp on the other side of the country, but I think every Marine has to get to Paris Island at least once in their lives. But well, cool. So what's gotten you into multifamily?
Well, what happened was that I was looking at different places to deploy some money. So I was looking at different things that I could invest in. I looked at stocks, looked at crypto, and looked at also single family home renting too as well. I still invest in all those things, but just not as much. My main focus is multifamily. But I was looking for something that allowed a win-win relationship between myself and the investor. And what stuck out there was multifamily investing through syndications.
Awesome. How's your journey been so far?
It's been going pretty well. I had set a goal for myself to get at least one property on as a GP, and I'm on the path of doing that.
Awesome. Yeah. So next question, and this is kind of like trying to, I've said this before, may not be the best analogy, but kind of peer into your soul. What's your big burning why?
What I want to do is be a catalyst for financial freedom and also generational wealth for my family. I want to make sure that I'm able to bring them in and help them understand not only multifamily, but business structures, stock investing, real estate investing. And actually on my path to doing that, I have a meeting with my family and some friends the July 15th to start that process.
Nice. You picked a good day too. It's going to be my 25th anniversary. So yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So man, am I old enough to have been married for 25 years? That's crazy. But well, cool. Well, hey, Charles, we'd like to help you as much as we can. So we got Cyndee here on the line with us. What do you want to ask her?
Just have a couple questions I think will be good for me and anyone listening. What are some of the key performance indicators you ask for from the property manager?
That is a really good question.
Yeah.
I ask that often. So we meet with the property manager every week. So the one property that we have for a few years, I only meet with them every other week, but especially when we first take on a property, we meet every week. I want to make sure that we're staying focused together. So I always want to know, what is the occupancy? What is the average rent? Because as long as we're leasing at the higher rate, that's going to keep pushing our average rent up to get us to where we have it projected. I'm also wanting to know, what is their marketing? How many people are coming through the door and how many of those are being converted into leases? So I do look at that rate as well, because that really, is going to help us see where we are with the property.
Yeah. The last one you mentioned, it's going to help prevent future problems. I mean, if you're watching that number, you're going to be able to see slides in occupancy before they materialize. So if their marketing, their advertising takes a dive and they don't get as many people calling in, that's a problem 1, 2, 3 months from now. And if you're only looking at the occupancy reports, by the time you see that number start to dip, you're already on a trajectory. And it's going to take a while to fix it. I like that.
Right, you're kind of already answered, but one out of those key performance factors, what would you consider to be the top two?
Those two.
Yeah.
Those are the ones
Yeah.
that I really focus
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you do to develop a sense of community in your apartments?
Oh, I love that question.
Mhm.
Thank you for asking it.
Yeah.
So we do community events every month. Actually, we have two. So we instituted this. So the one property that I was telling you about that had the
Mhm.
very tired owner, people really didn't have a lot of interaction. They paid their rent and that was it.
Mhm.
So what we wanted to do is really have them come in before they were delinquent. We don't consider late fees good income. We don't want that money. We want them to pay on time. And so we instituted this pizza and pay, or popcorn and pay, or popsicles and pay.
Mhm.
And so every month we'll ask a vendor to sponsor it, and we'll have pizzas brought in with sodas, and people will come to the office and pay their rent. It gives them a chance to talk to the on-site. They talk with each other. Just
Mhm.
sometime during that day, we have it all day long. In the summers, when we do the popsicles and pay, people want to come in and get ice cream. We had one, we did a Sunday bar, so they had all kinds of ice cream and
Yeah.
toppings. So that's good, because then they're just coming in and seeing each other and seeing the on-site. And then once a month, we do some sort of community activity. So
Mhm.
for the 4th of July, one of the properties actually had a barbecue on site. They have an indoor pool.
Mhm.
And so they had a barbecue. They invited everyone to come, go swim. Another property, we had a lot of high school graduates that lived on the property. So we had a graduation party for them. It was a pool
Wow.
party with a barbecue and a cake,
Mhm.
for all the graduates. So we do try to do those things within the community that
Mhm.
they live in. And then as far as external community, like with the town that we're in, we like to support the sports. So we'll get a hold of the high school. We'll put up banners at the field, that list our properties. So we're actually putting money into the community. We're very big on hiring people that live in the area. We want to be able to have, they don't have to live at our property, but we do like people that live in that town. So we
Mhm.
like to use local contractors at all of our properties, so that we're putting money back into the economy. So two
Yeah.
ways. One is the community itself of the apartment, and then the community of the town that we're in.
Yeah, I love it. Now, one of the questions about the pizza or popsicles and pay, you guys encourage people to pay online too, and so that they can just still come in on the first of the month and still have that. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we want them to pay online.
Mhm.
So the properties I was telling you about that was super tired, it
Mhm.
was a
Yep.
ledger. They
Mhm.
were handwritten.
Oh, yes.
I
I've
mean,
seen some of
when
those.
we
Yep.
took it over, I was like, oh my gosh, they were not automated at all.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons why we actually did that, is so they would come in and we could show them how to go to the portal, how to pay online. We had people, they lived there for, years and had never actually used a portal.
Mhm.
And so we've really slowly, because it takes a while for people to change. So they still can pay, they can come in and pay. But when they do, we'd like to show them how to do it online. And then we're
Mhm.
using texting to let them know, remind them, hey, we have the barbecue tonight, or hey, we have the pizza and pay. So they're
Mhm.
getting used to getting notifications electronically.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and I've underwritten several properties. We put offers in on properties where it's handwritten rent rolls, handwritten ledgers. And sometimes you can get some really good deals like that. It's
We got
just
a smoking deal.
yeah, the mom and pop ownerships, they're a little less sophisticated. They may not be managing it as well. And yeah, end of the day, you're still buying on the NOI, and you can usually get pretty good deals on those. So I usually start smiling when I see handwritten ledgers.
Well, I started smiling when I went for the due diligence, because my first job was at Western Auto. This
Mhm.
is going to make me a lot older, but I was in high school and I was doing accounting, and I said, hey, I'd like to be your bookkeeper or work for your bookkeeper. They said, we're
Yeah.
not hiring. They called me back the next day and said, yeah, come on in, we'll hire you. And it was hand ledgers. So when I walked in the leasing office, I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
transported back in time.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's
Oh, another important question. Describe your process for selecting a contractor and ensuring that they've completed their work according to your standards.
That is a great question. And so I use Google Sheets. Once I know the underwriting and I know what our CapEx is and what we need to do, some of it is lender required. So I will set that up in a spreadsheet. So I'll have what it is, what we need to get done. And then I require 3 bids from the property management. and they have to load them into the tracker so I can actually look and see what it is. So I have different tabs. So they'll put the bids in there, but then on the tracker, they'll put the company and the total. And then what I like to do is after I have the 3 bids, I like to talk with the property management company. Sometimes the cheapest is not the best. So I like to talk with them and see, when they met with them, do they have the requirements that we need? Do they feel confident that they can do the scope of work? So we talk about who would be best fit to do the job. And if we're able to bundle a couple of properties together or different CapEx that they're doing, we'll ask them, will they give us a 10% discount? If we give them, 4 or 5 jobs, so we can reduce the price just because they're going to come to the location and stay there and do the work.
Yeah.
But I do require the 3 bids. And then often with our landscaping on the properties that we just purchased, the 3, we felt as a GP, they were too high. And so we have an asset management team that helps, run the asset management. And one of them said, hey, I'll take that on. So she called around and found some other people to give us bids. So don't be afraid if the property management, if you think, hey, I think we could do better than that, considering it's 3 properties, feel free to do it on your own. They don't mind. We have a really good working relationship. And I told them, I said, we're going to look too. And they're like, great. So
Yeah. And that's one of the benefits of having, properties clustered together is you're already paying payroll. So some of those things you can just do internally. And I think you said you have 300 units. So you probably have, a handful of people on staff already. And so from that point, it's like, yeah, the landscapers are terrible. Look around. Who do we have here? Hey, can you landscape? I mean, it's not quite that easy, but I mean, it's just kind of how it works. So,
but we do, because
Yeah.
we have a guy that's great with HVAC. He does
Mhm.
all 4 properties.
Mhm.
We do use internally what their skill set is. That's what we want them to do. So we
Yeah.
do, cross train and have them go to the different properties.
Now I've got a question for you on Vicksburg. Going off script here, Charles is supposed to be asking the questions here, but since Vicksburg is a smaller community, do you have a hard time getting these vendors? If you were talking about bids and everything else, do you have a hard time getting these vendors to come out?
Yes, absolutely. That
Mhm.
is a reality, because we're about 30 to 45 minutes, depending on where you start from,
Mhm.
Jackson,
Yeah.
Mississippi, which is the capital. So it's not that terrible. But if they're coming to do asphalt and, big concrete, and it is a consideration, they're going to have to, bring a lot of equipment. And so that's one of the reasons why we try really hard to use local vendors, because we want to we want to have people working. We want to provide jobs for people that live in that area.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit difficult. But I will tell you, with the landscaping, what we did is we did have bids from Jackson, and we're
Yep.
like, they're too expensive. And so
Yeah.
we contacted someone that had done the landscaping at one of the properties
Mhm.
before. And we said, hey, we are really trying to get this landscaping done. Would you be interested in it? And it was a increase in his workload, but he was up to the task. And so, you can't beat that. Here's this guy, he's all of a sudden, he's got more properties, and he's delighted to have them.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. All right, Charles, my interruption's over. Back to you. What other questions do you have?
What are some of the important qualities that an asset manager must have?
Let me think. Well, I'm very tenacious. So that, I think, is a quality, because you have to be able to understand the underwriting and what the business plan is. And then you have to work with the property management, and you have to blend the 2. So I am very tenacious. I definitely am organized. You cannot do this and not be organized. When I was looking at what your work had done, and you had done project management, I'm like, you would be a great asset manager, because it is a lot of project managing. So I think that's mainly is being able to be organized and to follow through. You would be surprised the number of people that don't follow through. And I think it is a skill that can be learned. If you have an attitude toward numbers, that you like them, that you like, seeing projects completed, that's what I work on. I'm very deadline driven, and I'm very agenda driven. When I have a meeting with the property management, we have an agenda. We just don't get on there and chat. Like, I have things I need to accomplish. I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to waste my time. But at the same time, I'd like to think I'm friendly. I like to find out what's going on with them and how the property's going. And if there's, if they have things they want to talk about, I want to listen to that, especially my on-sites. They're on a little bit of the call. They're not on the whole call, but I do want to know how they're feeling about the property and how we as owners can help them.
Yeah. And what we found, I've never been the asset, well, never. The last couple of years, I've not been the asset manager. I was up front until my partners fired me, but it was more of a work change thing. But the people who are on site, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the face people see when they come through the door. And so it's definitely important to have a relationship with them as well. I mean, it's really easy sometimes to just, focus on that property manager, but that's where the rubber meets the road. And, that's a lot of times where a lot of things get missed too, because you're talking with the property manager, and the property manager is going to turn and send it downhill. But yeah, good point on that one. Good idea to have them on the call for the first part. All right. Charles, any more questions?
Just one more.
Cool. Well, I was just going to say, we do have time for one more. So,
Okay.
yeah.
What type of questions should you ask a property manager before hiring them?
Charles, if you'll send me your email, I'll send you my spreadsheet. My husband says I'm the queen of questions. So
Mhm.
I literally have a spreadsheet that has probably 30 to 40 questions. I try to work it in a conversation with them so that I'm not just peppering them with questions, but I do have it up. I had a call today with a new property management company, and I had it up on my screen, so that I could kind of watch it and work it in the conversation. But there are a lot of considerations. I'll be happy to email it to you. But some of the things, just a high level, you want to see if they're already in the market. So you want to know what their footprint. If they already there, they're going to be able to help you to know what the property can actually, what the rents can be pushed to. If they're already there, sometimes you might have challenges in that area. You want to know what those are, and they already know because they're already there. They're going to tell you what is the upsides, what are the downsides to that, and how you can use it to your benefit. So I definitely want them to have a good footprint in the area. The other is, how many units do they have? If you're buying a property that, is 150 units and they only are managing 50 in that city, they may not be able to really help you. You might need someone that has a bigger footprint. The other thing is you want to make sure that you understand, how much they charge for their property management fee, and what does that include? You want to be very clear on that so that when you're looking at your contract with them, you want to make sure that that's covered. You know what your responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are. But I do have a whole list of questions.
Yeah. Yep. A lot of good questions. So, well, awesome. Hey, we are about out of time. So one last question for each of you to wrap things up. Cyndee, you get to go first. Question is, how can listeners learn more about you?
Well, they're free to contact me at my email. It's high caliber asset management at gmail.com. Super long word.
Yep.
High caliber asset management at gmail.com.
Okay.
Just shoot me an email. I'll send you my calendar and we can set up a time to talk. I love helping students to understand, what they're taking on and how I can help them.
Awesome. And we'll have that email address in the show notes because the British spell it differently than the US people do, but just make sure everybody's got the right one. Now, Charles, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
Is to go to my website, and that would be going to www.hamiltoninvestmentsgrp.com. The other way is to send me an email, which is Charles Hamilton at Hamilton with an S, Hamilton Investments with an S, grp.com. Those are the two ways.
Right. And same thing for listeners. We'll have that information in the show notes as well. So if you'd like to reach out to any of these two, please do. And there we have it. Thanks again, guys, for coming on the show. Very much appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was a pleasure to meet you, Charles. Good luck.
Thanks a lot. Best luck to you too.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.